Oh, check it out. Look at a little black bear on the side of the hill. Let me get it settled.
Deep in the wilderness, where civilization feels like a distant memory, the Expedition Bigfoot team had reached a crucial moment in their investigation. This wasn't just another vast wilderness to explore. This was their most targeted, scientifically backed search area they had ever identified. The algorithm had processed every piece of data from their previous investigations, cross-referenced with reported sightings from local witnesses, and calculated the probability zones with mathematical precision. The result was both thrilling and terrifying. They were closer than ever to potentially encountering the legendary creature. Russell's strategic positioning. Russell Acord positioned himself 1 mile north of the target clearing, his vantage point carefully chosen for maximum observation potential. The landscape spread out before him like a natural amphitheater, with the infamous trestle directly in his line of sight, the same location where mysterious tracks had been discovered during their previous investigation. The setting was almost too perfect. The elevated position offered an unobstructed view of everything below, creating what Russell recognized as an ideal backdrop for observation. Every shadow, every movement, every anomaly in the forest canopy would be visible from this strategic perch.
Right down here
is the trestle right in front of us where we saw the tracks.
So with this vantage point, we can literally see everything below us.
The trestle, a man-made structure that had become a focal point of activity, sat prominently in the foreground, serving as a reference point for any unusual occurrences. Russell's mind raced with the possibilities. This wasn't just about finding Bigfoot anymore. It was about positioning himself in exactly the right place at exactly the right time. The algorithm had brought them here, but now it was up to human instinct, patience, and skill to capitalize on this opportunity. The art of concealment. The previous night's attempt at surveillance had been a harsh lesson in the realities of wilderness observation. Russell and his team had settled into their ghillie suits, those carefully crafted camouflage garments designed to make them invisible to wildlife, and waited in the cold darkness. But the experience had been nothing short of miserable. The suits, while effective for concealment, offered little protection against the biting cold and uncomfortable terrain. As dawn broke and feeling returned to their numb extremities, Russell knew there had to be a better way. Spending 3 or 4 days in such conditions wasn't just uncomfortable, it was strategically unsound. A cold, tired observer was a compromised observer, and they couldn't afford any disadvantages in this critical phase of their investigation.
1, 2, 3. Got some impressions. Look at that. They're not very big. I think we got a juvenile.
The solution came from old-school military tactics. Russell began the painstaking process of constructing a proper observation blind, digging into the hillside to create a concealed position that would offer both comfort and effectiveness. Each shovelful of earth brought him closer to creating the perfect surveillance post, a hidden vantage point where he could maintain watch for extended periods without detection. Advanced countermeasures. As Russell put the finishing touches on his blind, he introduced a piece of technology that revealed just how seriously the team took the intelligence of their potential quarry. He carefully positioned an EMF blanket, its metallic underside designed to block electromagnetic signals that might betray their presence. The reasoning behind this precaution was both scientific and deeply unsettling. Numerous researchers in the cryptozoology field had reported that Bigfoot seemed capable of detecting electronic equipment from considerable distances. Time and again, investigators would report equipment malfunctions, battery drains, and electronic interference when they believed they were close to an encounter. Russell's own experience validated these concerns. 2 years earlier, during an investigation in Central Oregon, he had witnessed something that still sent chills down his spine. In the middle of a critical observation period, his flashlight had suddenly died, refusing to turn back on despite having fresh batteries. Simultaneously, the production crew's filming equipment had begun malfunctioning in ways that defied logical explanation.
Russell, I can't see you. My camera.
My light just went out on me.
I can cannot get it to turn back on again.
The timing was too precise, too coordinated to be mere coincidence. The EMF blanket represented more than just equipment protection. It was an acknowledgement that they might be dealing with a creature whose capabilities extended far beyond what conventional science was prepared to accept. If Bigfoot could indeed sense electronic signatures, then every piece of technology in their arsenal became a potential liability. The power of magnification. With his concealed position complete, Russell deployed his most valuable observation tool, a high-powered scope capable of magnifying distant objects up to 60 times their natural size. From his elevated position, the scope transformed the distant tree line from a blurry mass of green into a detailed landscape where individual branches could be counted and analyzed. The psychological impact of this capability was profound. Russell was no longer just hoping to catch a glimpse of movement in the distance. He could now observe minute details that would normally be invisible to the naked eye. Every shadow, every unusual formation, every potential sign of movement could be examined with forensic precision. The scope essentially extended Russell's presence across the landscape without requiring him to physically expose himself. He could study the area around the trestle as if he were standing mere yards away, while maintaining the safety and concealment of his elevated blind. This technological advantage represented the perfect marriage of human patience and modern optics. The waiting game. As Russell settled into his observation routine, the true test of wilderness surveillance began. This wasn't the fast-paced action of tracking a known animal or following fresh signs. This was the methodical, mind-numbing process of watching and waiting, allowing his eyes to adjust to the rhythm of the forest. The key to successful observation, Russell knew, was learning to see patterns and then identifying when those patterns were broken.
What's that? There's something dark there. Probably nothing more than just shadow. But that's what you look for. You look for a discoloration, a darker.
Every forest has its natural rhythm, the way shadows move with the sun, how branches sway in the wind, the predictable movements of local wildlife. An experienced observer learns to read this rhythm like a familiar song, becoming immediately alert when something doesn't fit. Russell began the process of training his eyes to scan systematically, covering every section of his field of view in overlapping patterns. He looked for shapes that didn't belong, movements that seemed out of sync with the wind, colorations that contrasted with the natural palette of the forest. It was tedious work that demanded complete focus and infinite patience. The scope revealed a world of detail that would normally remain hidden. Individual leaves became visible, the texture of bark could be examined, and the smallest movements were magnified into clear, analyzable phenomena. Russell found himself counting branches on distant trees, cataloging the normal patterns of shadow and light, building a mental database of what constituted normal for this particular stretch of wilderness. The first anomaly. Hours into his vigil, Russell's trained eye caught something that made him pause. Through the scope, he detected what appeared to be a darker area among the trees, something that didn't quite match the surrounding patterns of light and shadow. His pulse quickened as he adjusted the focus, trying to determine whether this oddity was significant or just another trick of the forest. The logical part of his mind immediately began running through possibilities. Shadows created by wind-blown branches could create temporary dark spots that might appear unusual to an observer. The interplay of sunlight filtering through the canopy could create optical illusions that would fool even experienced eyes. Most likely, this was nothing more than a natural phenomenon that happened to catch his attention. But Russell's instincts told him something different. After years of wilderness observation, he had developed an almost supernatural ability to distinguish between normal forest phenomena and genuine anomalies. This dark area had a quality that seemed somehow different, more solid, more purposeful than a mere shadow. As he continued to observe, the dark area seemed to shift slightly. The movement was subtle, almost undetectable, but it was there. Russell felt his breathing become more controlled, his focus intensifying as he tried to determine whether he was witnessing genuine movement or falling victim to the kind of optical illusion that could drive wilderness observers to distraction. Movement in the shadows. The breakthrough moment came suddenly and without warning. Through the scope, Russell clearly observed what appeared to be deliberate movement in the area of the dark anomaly. This wasn't the random swaying of branches or the play of shifting shadows. This looked like something was actually moving among the trees. Russell's training kicked in immediately. He began recording, knowing that without documentation, his observations would be worthless. The scope's magnification revealed details that would have been invisible to the naked eye, and he found himself staring at something that defied easy categorization. The movement had a quality that seemed distinctly non-random.
Interesting and unique video. I recorded this little piece. I have to show this to Bryce.
While the trees around the area were indeed swaying in the wind, creating their own patterns of shifting shadows, this particular movement seemed independent of the wind patterns. It appeared more deliberate, more controlled, as if something was consciously moving through the forest canopy. Russell's excitement was tempered by years of experience that had taught him the importance of skeptical analysis. The wind was indeed strong enough to create significant movement in the trees, and it was entirely possible that what he was seeing was an unusually dramatic example of shadow play. But the more he watched, the more convinced he became that this was something genuinely odd. The recorded footage would be crucial for later analysis. Russell knew that what seemed obvious in the moment might look completely different when reviewed under controlled conditions. But he also knew that his immediate impressions, formed by years of wilderness experience, were valuable data in their own right. The decision to investigate. Russell found himself facing a critical decision that would define the rest of his investigation. The mysterious movement was occurring in a tree line that was approximately 3/4 of a mile from his concealed position, a significant distance that would require him to abandon his carefully constructed blind and venture into potentially dangerous territory. The tactical implications were enormous. His current position offered complete concealment and safety, with an unobstructed view of a large area. Leaving this position would expose him to detection and eliminate his ability to observe the broader landscape. If Bigfoot was indeed as intelligent and alert as researchers believed, any movement on Russell's part could result in the creature disappearing before a proper encounter could occur. But the potential rewards of ground-level investigation were equally compelling. If something had indeed been moving in that tree line, there might be physical evidence, footprints, hair samples, disturbed vegetation, or other signs that could provide concrete proof of an encounter.
Listen, that thing was right on that wall.
Did you get eyes on that thing?
No.
Such evidence would be far more valuable than even the most compelling footage shot from a distance. The timing added another layer of complexity to the decision. Russell had planned to maintain his observation post until nightfall, believing that Bigfoot was primarily nocturnal and most likely to appear during evening hours. Leaving his position for ground investigation would mean sacrificing the prime observation period when an encounter was most likely to occur. The race against darkness. Despite the tactical risks, Russell made the decision to investigate. The potential for finding physical evidence was too compelling to ignore, and he calculated that he could make the journey to the tree line, conduct a thorough search, and return to his observation post before the critical evening hours began. The 3/4-mile journey to the target area was a study in wilderness navigation and time management. Russell had to move quickly enough to complete his investigation before dark, while remaining quiet enough to avoid alerting any wildlife in the area. Every step had to be calculated, every movement purposeful. As he approached the tree line where he had observed the mysterious movement, Russell's senses were on high alert. He was looking for any sign that something unusual had passed through the area: broken branches, disturbed undergrowth, unusual scents, or the telltale impressions that large animals leave in soft ground. The search proved frustrating in its lack of obvious results. Despite his careful examination of the area, Russell found no clear footprints, no hair samples caught on branches, and no other immediate evidence of large animal activity. The forest floor, covered with a thick layer of fallen leaves and natural debris, had apparently absorbed any traces of passage without leaving clear signs. Unexpected discoveries. While Russell's primary search for Bigfoot evidence proved inconclusive, his investigation revealed other significant wildlife activity in the area. He discovered what appeared to be bear prints, the distinctive double-step pattern that indicated a large bear moving through the territory at some point in the recent past. The presence of bear signs was both reassuring and concerning. It confirmed that the area was an active wildlife habitat, which supported the possibility that other large animals might also frequent the location. But it also raised the unsettling possibility that what Russell had observed through his scope might have been nothing more than a bear moving through the forest canopy.
Oh, it's moving. It's moving. Look, 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 look.
Further investigation revealed additional evidence of bear activity, including areas where the animals had been digging for grubs and other food sources. The disturbed earth and torn vegetation painted a clear picture of significant bear presence in the immediate area. For a moment, Russell's excitement dimmed as he considered the possibility that his mysterious shadow had been nothing more than a common black bear. But his instincts continued to suggest otherwise. The movement he had observed had possessed qualities that seemed inconsistent with typical bear behavior. Bears, while large and impressive, moved through forest environments in predictable ways that were familiar to experienced observers. What Russell had seen through his scope had seemed somehow different, more upright, more purposeful in its movement patterns. The twin investigation. While Russell conducted his ground-level search, his teammate Bryce was engaged in a parallel investigation 6 miles to the west, still within the boundaries of their carefully calculated target zone. Bryce had positioned himself at another lake known for Bigfoot sightings spanning the previous 40 years, a location with an established history of encounters that made it a logical focus for observation. Bryce's approach differed significantly from Russell's strategy. Rather than constructing a permanent blind, he had chosen to position himself at what he identified as the only practical access point to the lake. His reasoning was tactically sound. If anything was going to approach the water source, it would almost certainly use this natural corridor. The thermal imaging equipment that Bryce deployed represented the cutting edge of wildlife observation technology. Unlike traditional optical scopes that relied on visible light, thermal cameras detect heat signatures, making them effective even in complete darkness. Any creature with a body temperature different from the surrounding environment would appear as a distinct image on the thermal display. The capability range of Bryce's thermal equipment was impressive. He could detect heat signatures from any warm-blooded creature within a quarter-mile radius. This meant that even if a potential encounter occurred at considerable distance, he would still be able to document and analyze the creature's thermal profile.
Patience is the name of the game. I wonder how Russell's doing tonight.
The tactical error. As evening approached, Russell realized that his decision to investigate the tree line had created a serious tactical problem. His ground-level search had taken longer than anticipated, and he was now facing the prospect of returning to his observation blind in complete darkness. The implications of this timing error were significant. If Russell used artificial light to navigate back to his position, he would potentially alert any wildlife in the area to his presence. The beam of a flashlight could be visible for miles in the darkness of the wilderness, effectively broadcasting his location to any creature intelligent enough to recognize the significance of artificial illumination. But attempting to navigate 3/4 of a mile of wilderness terrain in complete darkness without artificial light presented its own dangers. The risk of injury from falls, obstacles, or simply becoming lost was substantial. Russell found himself caught between two unacceptable alternatives, both of which could compromise the entire investigation. The frustration was compounded by Russell's awareness that evening hours represented the most critical observation period. Most Bigfoot encounters reported by witnesses occurred during twilight or nighttime hours, suggesting that the creatures were primarily nocturnal or at least most active during periods of low light. By missing this crucial window, he might be sacrificing his best opportunity for an encounter. The dangerous return. Despite the risks, Russell made the decision to attempt the return journey to his observation blind without using artificial light. The alternative, spending the night exposed in the forest, seemed even less acceptable given the importance of maintaining his surveillance position. The journey back through the darkening forest was a test of Russell's wilderness skills and nerve. Every step had to be carefully placed to avoid obstacles that were now invisible in the darkness. Navigation relied entirely on his memory of the terrain and his ability to maintain direction without visual landmarks. The sounds of the forest seemed amplified in the darkness. Every crack of a twig, every rustle of leaves, every distant animal call took on heightened significance. Russell's awareness was heightened to an almost supernatural level as he moved through an environment where he could barely see his own hands. The psychological pressure was intense. Russell knew that he was moving through territory that potentially contained the very creature he was hoping to observe. Every shadow could conceal a watching presence. Every sound could indicate that he was no longer the observer, but had become the observed. The night watch begins. As Russell settled in for night observation, the forest took on the mysterious character darkness brings to wilderness environments. The familiar daylight landscape transformed into a realm of shadows and amplified sounds. Night observation in a potential Bigfoot habitat carried psychological weight that was difficult to describe. Every researcher spending extended time in such environments reported the same phenomenon, the growing sense they were no longer alone, that something unseen was aware of their presence. Hours passed as Russell detected breathing sounds unlike anything in his wilderness experience. They were too rhythmic for wind, too loud for small animals, and too close to dismiss as distant wildlife. The sounds seemed to originate directly above his concealed position. The proximity was most unsettling. Russell's blind had been constructed to be virtually invisible from ground level, but something was apparently close enough to be directly overhead. This suggested either incredible luck or the disturbing possibility that his position had been deliberately located. Russell's thermal imaging equipment began detecting heat signatures that defied explanation. The readings indicated something large and warm-blooded in the immediate vicinity, a signature unlike anything previously encountered. The size, shape, and heat distribution suggested a creature both massive and bipedal. Russell's whispered communications revealed the moment's intensity. His voice conveyed both excitement and barely controlled fear as breathing sounds became unmistakably close, creating almost unbearable tension. The culmination came in a moment of pure terror and excitement. Thermal equipment captured what appeared to be a clear heat signature of something massive moving near his position. The readings were unmistakable. Something large, warm-blooded, and unknown was not just nearby, but apparently aware of his presence. Russell's final communications captured what every Bigfoot researcher dreams of and fears, the moment when the theoretical becomes tangible, when years of preparation meet the ultimate test of actual encounter. The footage, thermal readings, and audio recordings represent some of the most compelling evidence ever gathered during the Expedition Bigfoot investigation. While definitive proof remains elusive, the combination of visual, thermal, and audio documentation creates a body of evidence demanding serious consideration. Russell's experience became a defining moment for the team, proving that even carefully planned investigations could be transformed by the unpredictable reality of potential encounters. The shadow in the trees had become something far more significant, a reminder that in the wilderness, researchers might not always be the ones doing the observing.